Good morning, everyone. Pete Hutt-Welker. I'm a trustee here at the church, and welcome to Point Pleasant Time Travel. This is the third session that we're doing, and so far so good. We look forward to other sessions going in the future. Refreshments downstairs, thanks to the hospitality committee. Yep. And more after this session. So please be sure to linger longer, as we call it, after church, downstairs, refreshments, and there's a lot of things on display down there too. Some of those may have a different meaning after this session. So we've been, let me just, I'd just like to open first with Jonathan. Ask Jonathan, our pastor, Jonathan Kraus, to open with prayer.
Oh, okay, that works. All right, good. We're still in the morning, so good morning. So let us pray. We thank you, Lord, for all of us being here today. We thank you for being able to read these journal entries. We thank you for this man who certainly has written these journal entries. Continue to be with us throughout this service and throughout this time. Amen.
Thank you, John. So I just want to quickly introduce who's going to be speaking. What we're going to be doing here is I'm going to give a little preamble, and then after that we're going to read from the journal of Joe Dobron. But the people who are going to be helping us do that, and thank you, Debbie, for helping me get this arranged, calling the people and getting them all their reading material. So we got Virginia, Jenny Ridgway, and she's here with her husband, Elliot, who is a Vietnam veteran. Sue First, a church member and deacon. Bill Slaughter, also a church member and a Vietnam veteran. Jim Jacobs. Jim's going to be speaking, and he's a trustee and also Jim Jacobs Towing. I'll bill you later for that plug, Jim. Robin Glenn cannot be here. He's a church member, trustee, deacon, fireman. He was actually out on 2 river rescues yesterday, so he's a little under the weather today. So in his place, Pastor Jonathan will be reading his part. And then, of course, Jonathan Kraus, our pastor here, and he's also director of children and youth. John Walter, there he is. He can't hear me. Hey, John. John Walter, you're not up yet. John is a church member and also a veteran of the Korean War, right? Mm-hmm. And Walter's Nursery. I'll bill you later for that plug, Buck. Eli Murgott. The Murgotts live next door here. Eli's a student, and he works at Altamontes. So they'll go there and get your Eli discount. No, I don't think that'll work. No. And Eli's father, Chip Murgott, local musician, and lives next door. They rent the house here on the property. And Annie's going to be taking pictures today. Thank you, Annie. Barbara Morris, who many of you know. Barbara is a church member and also part of the history committee, and she's going to be singing a song for us at the end. My wife, Debbie, longtime member, and myself, 25-year member, but I guess that's a long time. Not as long as some of you folks. So anyway, those are the people we're going to be presenting today. Let me get to the video, roll the video. So our mission with the Point Pleasant Community Association, or Point Pleasant History Committee, is to provide a forum and resources for the sharing and documentation of local history, to educate others through historical research and experience. There's a lot of people here with a lot of knowledge. We want to capture that, and we're trying to do that through this series. We're also scanning the church documents And there's a lot of them, starting in 1849, and we're up to about 1870. It's a lot of work, but that, if you go to our website, ppbaptist.org, to the history section, you can look at some of those old documents. It's very interesting. And I was telling Buck before, you'll see a lot of Tobias Walter in there. Tobias was very involved with the church, as were a lot of local residents. We have ideas. Just if anyone wants to do a presentation, let us know. I can help somewhat. But if you have anything you want to do, or think in prehistoric times, I think we have somebody that can do that. Early inhabitants and native peoples, we're going to have that next month. First colonial settlements, Revolutionary War. You know that the troops marched down 413, Durham Road. They marched down there, like 6,000 of them, and they encamped in Buckingham. So there's a lot of history of the Revolutionary War in this area. Early trades and commerce, religion, obviously, transportation, land, river, canal, rail, transportation, big in this area. Structures and architecture. I'd like to have somebody look at the houses and do some history on how it evolved here. And if anybody has any ideas, we're welcome to them. So our next session is on June 26th. That's the fourth Sunday of the month. And we are going to be talking about Native Americans in Point Pleasant and the surrounding area. And we have our own special Idaline Eisenhower here. She's our resident expert on local Native history. Okay. She's very humble. So, next month, the 26th, we'll do this again. And, ladies and gentlemen, the Community History Minute, starring Debbie Hutwelker. Yeah.
Now, you know I have to do more than 1 minute, okay? Because you know me. Yeah, so actually, I have two different things I wanted to talk about. And Pete, maybe you could help me with this first one.
Of course I can.
Okay, so it's a two-part question. Point Pleasant Community Baptist Church was once called Point Pleasant Baptist Church. When did they change the name, and why did they change the name?
Let me think.
This is a setup.
Well,
Yeah.
well, apparently it was around World War II. From what I understand, it was Point Pleasant Baptist Church, but during the war and after the war, there was a big need for religion and for our spiritual support. And so they changed it to the Community Baptist Church. And that's so that we could reach out and serve the community.
Yeah, I like that part of community. So anyway, I have a second one here. Louder, or should I lean forward?
Oh, you can just speak a little.
Okay, he's telling me to talk louder. Me, talk louder. Okay, Ginny's going. Yeah, see you. So while I was reading the trustees' minutes from 1856, I came across the job that two of the trustees were assigned. They had to go to several members' homes and collect this payment. What do you think that payment was? Anybody have an idea? Who said that? Nancy. Yeah. Yes. We used to rent our pews here. And the closer you were to the front, the more expensive it was. I don't know what... Yeah, so anyway, you rented your pews, and actually they don't do that anymore, but no. Shall I tell them what I did?
Go ahead.
In the back windowsills, there's an invoice for each of you. So, and, you know, it isn't 1856, so, no, I'm only kidding. But there were a lot of churches back at that time that did have rental for the pews. They had to think of different ways to make some money. So that's my history minute for
Thank you,
this
Debbie.
month.
Just to follow up on that a little bit, when the churches initially started to get set up here in the United States, they were leaving countries where the church was run by the state, the Church of England. And they came here, and they had to find ways to fund the church. It wasn't easy. And so with their powerful capitalist ideas, they rented the pews. But eventually it became an issue because the wealthy were the only ones that could come to church. And they couldn't reach to the people that didn't have money. So it ended, probably, I think, around the late 1800s, early 1900s. So now it's free, and you're all welcome to come. We won't charge you. So today we're going to be talking about a prisoner of war wartime log. It's a reading from the World War II wartime log of a local resident, Joseph Joe Dobron. And this is in recognition of all prisoners of war and Memorial Day, which is next week. Debbie, did you want to?
This, and I didn't know if it's
Oh, yeah, that's mine. I will need that. Thank you. So I'd like to thank, and we would like to thank as a church, the Dobron family for sharing their historical documents. Jeannie, thank you so much for bringing them. We've scanned them. They're preserved, and they'll be preserved for a long time. Everything that we're preserving here at the church is going to be available. Not everything will be online, but if you were interested, you could come and see it. I just wanted to give a quick summary of the timeline of World War II, just so you understand what was going on at the time. So the stage was set by instability in Europe after the First World War. So the First World War, 1914 to 1918, ended, but it was a real mess in Europe. It was very fragmented, very fragile. Well, this guy named Hitler took advantage of that, and on a populist platform, he took power of a very unstable Germany. In 1936, Hitler formed an axis, a strategic alliance with Japan and Italy. There were others as well. There was Hungary, I believe, and others that were involved. But the primary players here were Japan and Italy. In 1939, he invaded Poland. And what's interesting is he had the help of Russia. Russia invaded from one side, Germany from the other. And later on, he attacked Russia. Interesting. So France and England were allies with Poland. So they came to the defense of Poland, and thus they entered into the war. And of course, December 7th, actually the next day, after Pearl Harbor, Franklin Roosevelt declared war, and the U.S. declared war on Japan. And 3 days later, Germany, Japan, and Italy declared war on the U.S. And there you have it, World War II. There's a lot in between. May 9th, 1945, Victory Day was the end of the war. 3 years, 5 months, and 1 day was the length of the Second World War. 7 million U.S. troops, 1 million casualties. That's as much as COVID. And then 120,000 POWs. So let's talk about Private Joseph Dobron. He was born and raised in Point Pleasant, and I'm not going to get into a lot of details because we have a lot to review here, but he was a resident of Point Pleasant. I do know this, that his father-in-law was the toll bridge keeper and lived in the toll house for the bridge over to Byron. Did I get that right, Gene? Thanks. He was inducted in the Army June 7th, 1943 at 18 years old. And he was captured by the Germans in October. Imagine 4 months From 4 months, you joined the military, and now you're in a prisoner of war camp 4 months later. This is a picture of him when he enlisted. There he is in his dress uniform. And here he is in his field uniform, which is probably what he was wearing when he was captured. This is the telegraph message you don't want to get. I'll read it to you. It says, "The Secretary of War desires me to express his deep regret that your son, Private Joseph Dobron, has been reported missing in action since 4 of October in Germany. If further details or other information are received, you will be promptly notified." That went to his mother. And this is an actual letter that he wrote from his prisoner of war camp. He was in Stalag, it's hard to see here, Stalag X11A. And I have been taken prisoner of war in Germany. I am in good health. I'm sure the Germans wrote that. We will be transported here to another camp within the next few days. Please don't write until I give you the new address. And it's signed by him. So there was a lot of correspondence back and forth with the prisoners of war, which would surprise me. But it took a month for that correspondence to get to family and back. I actually found a picture of Stalag X11A. This is the gate into that prisoner of war camp. And this was after it was liberated. Those are U.S. soldiers that you see here. And this was after the camp was liberated, about 2 months before the end of the war. You'll hear in the minutes, in his notes, how often he moved. So this is where he started. This was the camp that he originally was placed in. But the Germans, because they were under attack, were moving constantly, moving the prisoners. This is what the log looks like. Ooh, I don't have it up here. Jeannie, do you have it here with you?
No, you took it back.
Oh, it's over in the annex, sorry. You'll have to believe me, that's what it looks like. The YMCA distributed an empty logbook to the soldiers to take with them into battle. And this is his, and he kept his notes in this. And if you go online, you can find others of these that people have written. So this is not uncommon. There were a lot of soldiers that carried these with them and took notes. So what we're going to do now is we're going to begin the reading. And I think I'm the first. So this is from Joe Dobron's Wartime Log. The beginning of my Army career. On June 7th, 1943, I was inducted at Allentown, Pennsylvania. I had a 2-week leave, and then on June 21st, I reported to New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. I stayed there for 4 days, and on the 24th, we left Cumberland, and not knowing where we were going or what kind of outfit I was to be in. We were on the train for 4 days and 4 nights. On June 28th, we arrived at Camp Hahn in California. I was with Battery C of the 816th Anti-Aircraft Battalion. I had 10 weeks of basic training. November 15th, I had my first furlough in 17 days, and afterwards returned to camp, and we started on our advanced training in the Mojave Desert. It was about 150 miles from Camp Hahn. Most of our training was on the 44 millimeter guns and 50-gallon water-cooled machine guns. We had 5 months of maneuvers. The first day of March 1944, we greased up all the equipment, and they told us to be ready to move out in a few days, that we were going over. March 7th, we left Camp Hahn, and they told us our equipment would catch up with us overseas. March 10th, we arrived at Cape Carson, Colorado. That's where we found out we were in the 90th Infantry. They had turned the whole camp into infantry. We had 6 weeks of infantry training, and on April 1st, I had my second furlough. I was due back at camp on April 15th. We got an extra 6-day extension. I got back to camp on the 21st of April. We stayed at Carson for 3 days, and on the 24th, we left Camp Carson. We were on the train for 3 days, and on the 27th, we arrived at Fort Meade in Maryland. On the 30th and 31st, we had a weekend pass and about 20 hours at home. We received all our new equipment there, and on May 4th, we left Fort Meade and got to Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. The same day, I got to go home 2 times, but only for 12 hours each. May 10th, we left Kilmer and got on a ferry to Newark, New Jersey, and crossed over to Brooklyn, New York. We got on our boat, and at 8:25 that night, the boat we had was a French boat, the SS Columbia. On May 11th, we sailed. We were gone 11 days and nights. May 22nd, we landed in Glasgow, Scotland. We left Scotland the same night, and on the 23rd, we got to Warminster, England. We went out to a replacement depot outside of Warminster called Chuckalay Park. We stayed there for 4 days and left there on the 27th and arrived at Southampton, England. On the 28th, we sailed in a boat called the SS George Washington, an English liner. And now I think Bill Slaughter is going to read. Thank you, Bill.
Before I start, full disclosure, I am not a Vietnam veteran. I did, in fact, serve in the Navy for 4 years during Vietnam, but I did not get near the conflict over there. Just to clear that up. Okay, this reading starts on June 6th, 1944, which we all know as D-Day. We landed at Normandy, Omaha Beach, on June 7th or 8th. Before I got off the boat, I met Alex Demuse, and I seen him once on the beach, but that was the last I seen him. That afternoon, we walked up Omaha Beach about 12 miles back to where we got on a truck and came up to another replacement depot. We had a few days of BAR and bazooka firing, and I believe, Elliot, isn't BAR Browning automatic rifle? Isn't that what he's referring to here? So we had a few days of BAR and bazooka firing. On September 4th, we came up to the lines to join K Company 115th Infantry of the 29th Division. On September the 4th was my first attack. We fought at Brest and the Brittany Peninsula. On September 18th, the Jerry's surrounded, and that sure, or I'm sorry, the Jerry's surrendered, and that sure was a relief. On the 19th, we moved back to the rest area about 25 miles. We set up a kitchen and everything. On the 21st, they started passes to the towns nearby. A few were to St. Rennes, St. Revere, and St. Matthias. The only thing we could buy was a fish dinner with a few spuds, and that cost 80 francs, or $1.16 American. On September 25th, we were supposed to get furloughs to England because everything was clear in France. But on the 23rd, we got orders to be ready to pull out on the 24th. So we packed up our equipment, filled up all the holes, and on the 24th, we pulled out. We were on the train for 5 days and nights. We were in these small French boxcars, 35 men and all our equipment to one car. And we were really crowded. We came through France and Belgium on the 29th. We got off at Holland near the German border. On September 30th, we came up to the lines in Germany. We took a few towns there, and on the 3rd of October, we took the town of Bergen. On October 4th, the Jerrys made a counterattack at daybreak, and at 7:30, our whole company was taken prisoner. They marched us all that day. About 7 p.m. that night, they stopped us at a big brick building, and we slept there on the floor overnight. The next day, they took us out on trucks about 150 kilometers behind the lines. They put us in a barrack that had beds but plain boards to lie on. I never seen so many bed bugs in my life. We all looked like we had the measles, where they had bit us all over the face and all over. While we were there the 4 days, we had 4 men to a loaf of bread and 7 men to a small can of meat per day. The first day I tried to eat that bread, I thought I would never eat it again because it was so sour and heavy. It must have weighed 6 pounds a loaf. But the second and third days, it began to taste like cake. Thank you, Bill.
Okay, Jim?
October 8th, we shipped out of there. They put 65 of us to a boxcar, and all we could do was stand in one place. We each got a third of a loaf of bread, so we figured we would be on the train but one day because we were so crowded and so little to eat, so we all ate our bread up the first day. The second day, we went without anything. Everybody was positive we would be there that night, but we found ourselves in the same car the next night and hungry and tired as could be. But that wasn't the worst of it. We had 3 or 4 air raids while we were parked in the yards, and while our planes were above, I never thought of being hungry or tired. I was too scared to do anything. On the morning of October 11th, we arrived at Limburg, Germany. We walked to a Stalag about 5 kilometers, Stalag 10-2A. We got there about 9 in the morning. The first thing they done was searched us. They took all of our helmets and rubber boots. They also took coats and jackets from some of us. They took my watch and ring, but I got my ring back. After we were through being searched, we went to get deloused. By the time we got through there, it was 3 p.m., so they took us to our barracks made of concrete with brick floors. They gave us each 2 thin pieces of blankets and a dirty old can to eat out of. About 1 hour later, they brought us some soup made of the tops of sugar beets and plain water, but it was good the first time, but after that I could hardly eat a few spoonfuls. The next day we registered as prisoner of war, and we all got a chance to send home a card saying we were prisoner and were well. Every morning we got up at 6 o'clock. We went outside to line up for our breakfast. We always had to stand there until 8 o'clock. We would get 6 men to a loaf of bread and a cup of coffee made of burnt rye. For dinner and supper, a can of that old soup. On October 15th, they started us to work. We would get up at 5:30, get out bread, and start off for Limburg. Some of our jobs were to mix concrete, fix railroads, clear away buildings that our bombs wrecked, putting water pipes in and other things. For dinner, they brought us our soup, We worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, whether rain or shine. I worked about 3 weeks and got sick with pneumonia, so I went to a hospital they made out of a barrack. We got better soup there, and they started giving us parts of the Red Cross parcels.
Thank you, Jim. Jonathan? And I might note that the Red Cross food was the biggest part of what they could get to eat that was nourishing. The Red Cross was allowed to deliver parcels. Lots of them were scavenged by the Germans before the prisoners got them, but you see a lot of Red Cross support at these prisoner of war camps.
You just want me to keep going? Or do you want me to break after this?
Yeah, keep going.
Okay, sorry about that. On November 21st, they shipped us out of Stalag X-11A. We were on the train for 7 days and nights. We had a little more to eat this time, but we all almost froze, and every night the bombers would come over us while we would be parked in the yards. Them were times we all wished they would go away. Every time they dropped a load, everything lit up like day, and the boxcars liked to jump off the track. November 28th, we got off of the train at New Brandenburg, Germany. We went to Stalag 11A, about 4 kilometers out of town. We had the same amount of men on a loaf of bread, but 1 canteen cup of soup a day without a few boiled spuds while I was there. I only got to do a little work around the camp. On December 2nd, I got to write my first letter home. December 7th, we received our first parcel, 4 men to a parcel. On December 14th, we left for commando. We didn't know where we were going or what we were going to do. That afternoon, we got off the train at St. Germany. We walked 7 kilometers to a town called Deschenberg. We got a barrack outside of town. That night, we each got a big bowl of spuds, and we all thought we had a good deal. The next day, we sawwood wood for ourselves, that our job to saw wood all winter. We hired 4 men to a loaf of bread and a bowl full of spuds at night. On December 24th, we got a Christmas parcel, and the chef gave us each a small loaf of bread that was supposed to be cake, and it tasted like cake against the other bread. We had 3 days off for Christmas and 2 days off for the New Year. We had been cutting 1 meter of wood per man all winter. A meter is about 7/10 inches long. So about March 1st, 1945, they cut down our food and said if we put up 2 meters per man, we would get more food. So we made a deal with them that we were finished our 2 meters, they would bring us to the barracks. So we put up our meters between 10 and 11 o'clock each day, and they brought us in. On March 6, 1945, I worked in the woods sawing wood 1 meter per man. A meter is about 39 to 7/10 of an inch square. March 7th and 8th, ditto. March 9th, ditto. I got a loaf of bread from a Polak for 10 cigarettes. March 10th, work increased to 2 meters per man per day in order that our food would not be cut down. And they bring us back to the barracks when we finished our 2 meters, which we did about 11 a.m. when we wanted to work. March 11th, Sunday cleanup the barracks and off the rest of the day. March 12th to the 18th, all about the same story, 2 meters per man. March 19th, I went to the doctor and got 1 week off. Nix aberrit, no work. March 20th to the 24th, I laid around the barracks. On the 24th, 4 boys, Doty, Smith, King, and Weber, took off after roll call, 8:30 p.m. On March 25th, Sunday, the sergeant had blanket check and found the 4 missing, so they locked us up and started to walk their post. About 4:30 p.m., they brought the boys back. A civilian policeman caught them at Bezul, 55 kilometers from here, about 2 a.m. They beat the boys a little with their rifles and made them do dirty details that night. March 26, the boys put up 1 meter per man because we were all mad for the way they treated the 4 boys. So they were all kept out until 7 p.m. March 27th, Jerry's told us they would cut us on our food and would keep us out until each put up 2 meters so that they would put up their 2-piece and came in. March 28th, the 4 boys went to the Straff Company at the Stalag. March 29th, I went to the doctor and got more time off. March 30th, Good Friday, Nietzsche heard tremendous bombing and artillery fire all day. Saw American planes fly over. March 31st, still laying around. April 1st, Easter Sunday, drew number 10 food parcel. April 2nd, no work, Easter Monday. April 3rd, the boys worked in the woods cleaning brush to plant trees. April 4th, the fellows dug holes to set trees. 4 American Mustangs flew over low enough to see the stars. April 5th, I went to the doctor, but he was closed, so I'm off till next sick call. We also got a month's supply of food parcels. April 6th, I have been playing crunk since March 18th. My wrist squeaks a little bit, but it does not bother me. And when I go to the doctor, he says, come back in 7 days. My next trip will be the 9th of April, but I'm afraid I will get the works, but I have to wait and see. French priests visited Commando and predicted war over by May 15th. April 7th, the boys did the same work. We received number 10 parcel. April 8th, Sunday, 3 French prisoners visited to cut hair. Said Americans were 220 kilometers from Berlin. Russians were 70 kilometers. Predicted war over by June. An American pilot was forced down 7 kilometers from here and was stabbed to death. April 9th, I got the skids put under me, the doctor said. April 10th, I worked one day, and the sergeant gave me 3 more days off. We planted pine trees in the holes that we dug. On April 11th, the sergeant wanted 2 men to stay in and dig a trash pit, so he picked me as one, so I talked the sergeant into another day. 2 GIs, 1 sergeant from the Stalag were here. They predicted that the war to last 6 weeks. We didn't do much work that day, so I talked the sergeant into 1 more day. He talked Polish. April 13th, Friday. Finished the hole. We heard loud artillery in Akak nearby. Heard from the German civilian that President Roosevelt died of a heart attack last night. Tank traps are being built on the road between Ribbets and Sants. April 14th, I went back to work after having 27 days off. Burned brush and woods by Chef's house. Polacks, French, and Jerry's started roadblocks. Saw many German army trucks with equipment pass. Heard loud bombing and Akak received food and parcel. 10 p.m. We heard bombing and saw flashes and Akak bursts and flares. That was the closest it has been. Looked like the 4th of July. April 15th. Polak said last night bombing was at Schwerin, about 70 kilometers. The Americans were supposed to be at that town. They also said all the truck and equipment that went through was going to the Russian front. Off of the American front, although it is Sunday, the juries are working on the roadblock.
Thanks, Jonathan. That was a mouthful.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, ACK, he referred to ACK, I believe that's anti-aircraft fire? ACK. But anyway, that's what he was hearing, anti-aircraft fire, which means the Americans and the Allies were coming to liberate So they're on their way. There's 2 poems. Now, in this journal, near the back, are a dozen poems that were written by one of the prisoners, and Joe put them in his log. The gentleman's name was Frank Stebbing, S-T-E-B-B-I-N-G, and I Googled that, and I found his poems in other journals as well. So Virginia Ridgway is going to read one of those poems, and then Sue First is going to read the second one.
This poem is entitled, "A Year Has Gone By." A year has gone by, little darling. We're still many miles apart. I'm a prisoner of war, little darling, but always you're in my heart. I was captured doing my duty for the land we know is right. And God up in heaven is guiding our comrades still in the fight. Old Glory is waving, little darling. She's leading the battle tonight. She'll never fall, little darling, for victory's with us tonight. The battle will soon be over. We'll return to our loved ones so dear. Our prayers ascending to heaven is that it won't be another year.
Thanks, Jim. Sue?
This poem is titled To Mother. Here in the Stalag, as days pass by, I've got to recall, to think, to sigh. I remember the day when I used to cry, and to your open arms I'd fly. I remember, too, when just a lad, how many times I made you sad. I remember you're the sweetest mother a guy ever had. In the heart of the battle, I had no guide. My friends, my buddies, were wounded or died. You never taught me to run and hide, so I fought it out with you by my side. The day is near when home I'll go, to those I knew so long ago. I've learned so much from friend and foe. Yes, now I know why I love you so.
Thank you, Sue. Bill?
This begins April 16th, and of course, 1945. Today we cleaned out the underground oven used to make charcoal for their autos. The last 2 nights, there were foot soldiers moving through the town of Revitz. April 17th, we burned brush and dug holes for planting trees. We heard a continuous rumble of artillery all day. The Polacks said Americans were 50 kilometers from here. We got a new commando sergeant today. Some of the fellows got mail from home. April 18th, same work today. Artillery sounded closer than ever. The new sergeant is giving haircuts for 1 cigarette each. April 19th, this morning we dug holes for fence posts. This afternoon we burned brush. A rumor around of the war ending this month. April 20th, we burned brush again today, saw 3 American fighters go over. Today is Adolf's birthday. The Jerrys thought that the Krieg, in parentheses, war, would end today. April 21st, it was raining this morning, so we didn't go to work. But it let up about 8 a.m., so we went to the chef's house and cut wood. April 22nd, Sunday, the new sergeant left today and the old Polak sergeant came back. I got it made. April 23rd, cold today, we dug holes. The Russians are supposed to be in Berlin. April 24th, same work. The Americans are supposed to be in Berlin. April 25th, we were awakened early this morning by low-flying German planes. Last night, we saw a large Jerry plane fly over with a small plane on top of it. I got a little boil on my chin, so the sergeant let me stay in today and go to the doctor tomorrow. When the boys went to work this morning, they met a Frenchman, and he told them that the Krieg is kaput, war's finished. April 26, I went to the doctor and got 3 days on this boil. It was a French officer. A GI sergeant visited our command and said all the rumors are German propaganda, but he said 1/3 of Berlin was taken. He also said all the big shots had a conference in San Francisco. Next day, 27th, we saw about 10 Spitfires flying over at high altitude. At about 5:30, we saw 4 Spitfires dive down low as if to strafe. We could not see what they dove at. All day long, Jerry Army equipment had been seen moving through town. At 10 p.m., heavy trucks could be heard moving through town. Lights were seen flashing about and loud talking and yelling was heard. Next day, the 28th, went to the doctor and got 3 more days. As we went through town this morning, we saw that the German army had moved in overnight. That's what all the noise was we heard last night. The streets were all lined with camouflage trucks and soldiers. April 29th, Sunday, no work. All night, Jerry planes were flying over the barracks. The planes we took for Spitfires were Russian planes. They strafed a town 4 kilometers from Ribnitz. We heard heavy bombing last night, and it shook the whole barrack. April 30th, a Russian came to the wire this morning with a couple bottles of wine made of sugar beets. He said all the Jerry soldiers' equipment moved out town last night. He also said that Russian tanks were in Ribnitz yesterday and would be here in 3 days. One of the Jerry guards came in and said that the Americans were 40 kilometers away and would be here in 3 or 4 days. At 2 p.m., there were 4 Russian planes strafe Ribnitz.
Thank you, Bill. John? Gene, that little insignia that your dad brought back with him, could you grab that? Do you know where it is down there? Could you bring it up, please? Thank you.
This is May the 1st, May Day. All night, heavy trucks and equipment have been moving through town. The boys went to work as usual to cut wood at the kitchen. And we came down and said, no work, May Day. So they came back. All feeling happy, they were marching in formation with Irishmen in charge. We heard several loud explosions as blowing up roadblocks. Something is up because the sergeant gave us all our parcels without opening any cans. We all saw civilians going to the woods in a hurry. We just heard guards talking. They are getting ready to take off. We see our artillery exploding nearby. At 5 minutes of 11 a.m., they said, pack up and pull out. So at 11, we pulled out of Danchenberg. They said we were going to the American lines. We got into Rostock and saw that it was all in flames. We tried to get around it, but ran into the lines. We could hear terrific shell fire and small arms fire. Jerry soldiers were everywhere, throwing away their weapons and tearing off their insignias. We walked about 30 miles, stopped at a summer resort on the Baltic Sea, and slept in a barn. All our guards threw away their weapons and went away.
Thanks, John.
Yeah.
May 2nd, in Russian hands. All night there was artillery and small arms fire. This morning, we saw all the civilians running along the waterfront, so we all decided to follow them. They were going to a ferry which was taking everybody to Lübeck, Kiel, and Denmark. All of the guards got in line, so we took off because they were afraid they would take us to Denmark, which is still in German hands. We walked about 5 kilometers from the sea, and then still were in German hands. Then we saw some Italian prisoners. So remember, the Italians were fighting with the Germans. So those were Italian prisoners of war, prisoners taken by the U.S. or the Allies. So we stayed with them all morning. There were German soldiers and civilians running up and down the road. Here it is, 11 a.m. There is a solid line of wagons and artillery guns coming down the road. It was the Russians. They came in without a shot being fired. We went down to the road, and every one of the Russians were drunk as they could be. They had piano accordions, and they were singing as loud as they could. At 11:30, the Jerrys started sending artillery in from the Baltic Sea. Machine guns and rifles opened up, and we all hit the ditch. As soon as the action died down, I dug myself a ditch. We could see the German soldiers and civilians coming out from all over, waving flags and white bands tied to their arms. We decided to go up to the Russians and see what we were to do. They told us to take what we wanted from the Germans and start for Rostock. That's where the Russian commander was supposed to be. We walked about an hour before we came to a town. I thought the Americans were there because all we seen was American equipment. The Reds, the Russians, gave us some stuff to drink and 3 of those big circles of cheese. They also got us some bicycles and told us any Jerry we seen with a bike, we should take it from him. As we went along, the Russians got us some more bikes. Some of the boys had shoes with wooden soles, so they took boots from the Jerry soldiers that had shoes and wanted to give them to us, but the boys didn't want to wear them, so they gave them to the Polak prisoners. At 5 p.m., we were at 13 kilometers from Rostock, and we stopped at a farmyard to eat. When we were ready to leave, the boys that didn't have any bicycles took 2 wagons and 3 horses and rode to Rostock. When we got there, we saw tanks, trucks, half-tracks galore. There was a Jerry plane flying over, and there was a lot of ACK fire, anti-aircraft fire. From all the Russians, some of the Russians told us that we could not see the commander until tomorrow, so we decided to stay in the barracks and the barracks where an American commando stayed. When we got there, we found out that the GIs took off 2 days before. One of the Russians just came in and said that Berlin had just fallen. Eli.
May 3rd, we got up about 7 a.m. and ate breakfast. At about 9 a.m., 3 of the boys rode to Rostock, something like that, on bikes to see the Russian commander, to see what we are supposed to do. 10:30, the boys just came back, and they said the commander did not get to Rostock yet, but will be here tomorrow. All the boys took off for town, and they're coming back with whiskey, bread, bacon, eggs, jelly, smokes, salami, butter, shoes, watches, bikes, etc. They also got 3 chickens, so the boys picked the feathers and I cleaned the insides out, and we made a big pot of soup with macaroni, onions, spuds, and the chickens, and it really tasted good. Quite a few of the boys are feeling pretty good. They can't even stand on their feet. We took a few radios from the civilians in town. We hooked one up and have been hearing London and New York all day, and it really felt good to hear all the good news of Berlin and Hamburg falling. We also heard Glenn Miller and his orchestra. The Russian soldiers have been telling us all day that the Americans were 20 kilometers. Others said 40 or 50. But the radio from London said they were at Schwerin, I think, 70 kilometers away. So we decided to get up early tomorrow morning, and if we cannot see the commander, we will take off for our lines on bikes and horse and buggies. Well, it's about 10 p.m., and the boys are hollering to put the lights out so that the drunken Russians don't come in here, so I guess I will hit the straw. May 4th, in British and American hands. We got up at 5:30 a.m. We started out at 6. We had about 15 bikes and a buggy. From Dierkow, we went to Rostock. From Rostock, we headed for Wismar. That's where the Americans are supposed to be. The roads are covered with Americans and French going one way and Polacks, Russians and Serbians the other way. We went about 40 kilometers and there was a detour, so we had to go through fields and wood for about 6 kilometers before we came to the main road. We went about 15 kilometers before we came to a gate where there were some Russians on guard. They said it was 1 kilometer to our lines, but we can't get through because the generals are in a conference about what to do with the prisoners, so we stood there a while. Then he came out and left us through, but turned the French back. We rode a little ways before we seen some British and Canadian paratroopers. We stayed with them till an American officer came up and led us to a place to sleep. We got there at about 8:30 p.m. and drew 2 blankets to sleep with. Exactly 7 months ago today, I was taken prisoner.
Thank you, Elon. Chip? So the Allies had to deal with over 450,000 prisoners of war. So you can imagine what they were dealing with at that time. These were German prisoners they had captured.
This is an entry of 5 days starting May 5th, 1945, and culminating in Victory Day, VE Day. May 5th, we got up about 7:30 this morning, washed up at 9 a.m. We went to a British mess hall and had breakfast. White bread for the first time in over 7 months. After breakfast, I went back to our room and found out the British trucks were waiting for us. They are taking us to Limburg, the first camp I had been to in Germany. Right now, we are parking in a town called Gettebach. We all were off the trucks, getting some fresh milk out of a creamery. The Jerrys are lined up for a mile waiting to get their ration. 6 p.m. We just arrived at Limburg, the British headquarters. This morning when we left Wismar, the British told us we were going to Limburg, but we ended up here. At about 2 p.m., we stopped in a town and had dinner, which took about 2 hours to sweat out the line. When we got to where our trucks were supposed to be, they had already left, so the 3 of us got a ride in a Jeep with a British captain. We had to cross on a pontoon bridge because the main bridge was blown up by the Jerrys. When we got here, we registered and sent a card home. Then we got a towel and shaving equipment and took a shower next. We got deloused. At 8 p.m., we went and ate supper. We were told we would fly to England in 2 or 3 days. Right now, it's pretty close to 10 o'clock, so I guess I will hit the hay. May 6th, I got up at about 8 a.m. Washed up and made myself a cup of coffee because the chow line must have had at least 1,000 men in it, and I didn't feel like sweating it out. About 10:30, they called out all of the Americans, and about half of them were sent away, and there still are about 400 here. It's about 1 p.m. I just got back from the aid station. I had a boil on each side of my face, so I had them take care of it. It's been raining all day. They told us that the rain was holding up our transportation because the planes can't fly. It's about 9 p.m. now, so I guess I will take a walk and then go to bed. May 7th. I got up at 7 a.m., washed up and sweated the chow line out. At about 10 a.m., they called out all the Americans, and about 125 of them were sent off. Then they called out 125 more for the next shipment, and most of our commando are on that. We will leave this afternoon or tomorrow, 4 p.m., and we are still here. A British soldier just told us the war is completely over. May 8th, 1945. Got up at 8 a.m., had breakfast and slept till 11 a.m. when they awoke us and said we fall out in a half hour. We just got a toilet kit and some chocolate issued us. I just seen the bulletin board they made today. VE Day. 12 noon, we are waiting for trucks in the park lot. We waited in the square till 5:30 when the trucks came. We rode till 9:30. We went about 150 kilometers, that's 90 miles approximately, to a British bivouac area where we slept in tents the first time in about 8 months. May 9th, I got up at 8 a.m., washed up and ate. Now I am waiting for a plane. These British must be giving us a runaround. They had us waiting out in the field all day for trucks to go about 100 miles more to a plane. 9:30 p.m. The trucks just got here. We rode till 3:30 a.m. to a town called Emstetten, still in Germany. Now they say we will get a plane here.
Thank you, Chip. So I'll read the final entry here. May 10th. Well, we finally got the plane at 4:30 p.m. We got into a B-17 Flying Fortress, 25 of us and a 4-man crew. We went 400 miles to a camp in France. We got there at 6:30 p.m. May 11th, laid around all day doing nothing. May 12th, ditto. May 13th, got up at 5:30, washed and ate. Are supposed to move out at 8 a.m. We got in a C-47 Skytrain at 9:40. There were 28 of us plus the crew. We rode exactly 1 hour. We got off at 10:40 and got in a truck and rode for 2 hours to a camp called Lucky Strike. And what a place. It's worse than the desert. 9 p.m., just came back from sweating the chow line. I was there since 5 p.m. and got only 2 boiled potatoes. May 14th, laid around all day. May 15th, ditto. June 6th, we finally left Camp Lucky Strike. They said we would be home by May 15th. We left camp at 6 p.m. and in France. They arrived in France at 9 p.m., and at 9:30 we got on a ship, the SS Explorer, said to be in New York in 7 to 8 days. June 7th, we sailed. June 18th, we dropped anchor in the bay outside of Newport News, Virginia, at 12 noon. They tied the boat up at the docks. We got off at 2:30 p.m., got to Camp Patrick Henry at 5:30 p.m. And boy, what a chow we had. It was a steak and potatoes, gravy, corn, asparagus, celery, olives, biscuits, butter, cake, ice cream, and milk. And that was the final entry. There's a lot of recipes that he put in the book, in the back, and the poems, obviously. I will bring it over so you can look at it downstairs. So let me just continue here a little bit. This is the telegraph that his mother received. This is Matthew Dobron. The Secretary of the War desires me to inquire you that your son, Private Dobron Joseph, returned to military control. He returned to military control. In other words, he was safe. He was liberated. He was taken out of the concentration camp. He was in the control of the U.S. military. And that was received May 30th, 1945. I'm sure that she was very happy to see that telegram. So, downstairs in a little box, Jeannie's got a bunch of his medals and awards. Infantryman's Badge, Purple Heart, Presidential Citation, Good Conduct Medal, Overseas Ribbon, and 3 battle stars. And he was born in 1925 and passed away in 2012. And he was a fireman. And there's a lot more about Joe. And I would like to invite anyone that would like to have any comments or thoughts. I can bring you a microphone. I know John had something that he wanted to say, I think.
Why, I was just a kid about 14 or 15 years old when all these fellows come home from the service. And it was a big, exciting thing for me. And I was downtown on the wing wall every night talking to all of them. And they would take us rides in their cars. And I guess, I don't know how many people's aware of it, but right after the war, the very first automobiles were all given to the soldiers that came home. And they would take them on trips and do whatever they wanted, and somebody would offer them a lot more money than they paid for them, no matter where they went. So they'd sell them right on the spot, find another way back till they could get another car. And there were several fellows right from our little town that did this, but one that really I got a kick out of was Joey and Jeannie's dad and mom. And I remember this very well. The first car Joe bought was this beautiful blue baby. It was like a robin's egg blue Chevy convertible. And Jeannie's mother and him went on their honeymoon with it. And I remember this. I wasn't with them. But on the way home, somebody offered him so much money for it, he sold it. And they got home. I remember they came home in something, or I can't remember the details, but we were looking over the cars and all the things this morning with Jeannie here, and it was definitely, I had it right. I mean, this happened, and there was a lot of other guys in town with the same thing, but it was quite a time, and I was I guess a juvenile delinquent, because I was allowed to go down and sit on the wall in town. And most of these fellows that got out and got home all went to work for my father. Now the Dobron boys didn't, because they had their own business. But all the other local guys, my dad was having an essential business. In other words, he was exempt. And then he was planting trees all over the place for the cause. And anyhow, it was an exciting time. That's it.
Thank you. Thanks, Barb.
I don't know where I learned this, but I've been singing it to children and grandchildren forever. Proudly she waves, oh glory, over the land of the free. Emblem of of liberty. Red, white, and blue are her colors, colors both brilliant and clear, colors with far deeper meaning than that at first may appear. Red is for blood of patriots who have died to free us. White is for purity in justice and in law. And blue is for honor and faith in all we do. This is our flag. This is Old Glory, the red, white, and blue. Proudly she waves o'er the land of the brave. Proudly she waves.
Thank you, Barb. That was wonderful. So, just in wrapping up, I'd just like to thank everyone again for coming. God bless you. God bless all these soldiers that have served for us. Memorial Day's coming, and obviously that's when we really remember them. If you can come to the parade next week in Doylestown, I'll be on a float singing military songs, old songs. It's fun. We do it every year. And Elliot's in the parade too. Yep. So he'll be walking. You want to sing with us? Okay. Thank you all for coming. Go downstairs, have something to eat and drink, and socialize. God bless you.